That night, my life changed forever. I was just getting home after cancelling a trip. The plane had taken off without me. A problem with my passport, something absurd, forced me to turn back. I was tired, annoyed, with my suitcases still in the trunk of the car. I opened the front door carefully. I didn't want to wake anyone. It was almost midnight. Then I heard it. The voice of my son, Robert, was coming from the living room. He was on the phone. He was talking loudly, excitedly, almost euphoric. I stood still in the hallway. Something in his tone stopped me, and then he said something that froze my blood. Mom's plane went down. The $18 million is ours. Finally. My heart stopped beating. I was paralyzed behind the living room door. The keys were still in my hand. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I heard laughter. I heard voices. I heard my own son celebrating my death. My name is Brenda Miller. I'm 62 years old. And what I'm about to tell you is something I never imagined living through. Because that night, my son didn't know I was alive, and I didn't know my entire life had been a lie. I still have the rosary my mother gave me before she died in my hand. I squeezed it so hard that night the beads dug into my palm. That rosary was with me through every moment of what came next. But before I tell you what I did when I walked into that room, let me take you back to the beginning. Because to understand why my son wanted me dead, you need to know who I was, and above all, who I believed he was. Sometimes we trust the wrong people too much. Have you ever been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read them. Robert was born on an October morning. I perfectly remember the smell of pumpkin spice and cider coming in through the hospital window. It was Thanksgiving season, and the bakeries all over the city were already making apple pies. My husband George cried with emotion. He kissed my forehead and said, "Brenda, you gave us the greatest gift. This boy is going to be our joy." And he was. For many, many years, he was. Robert was a cheerful child, one of those who hug tight and say, "I love you, Mum," without being asked. He loved helping me in the kitchen. When I made turkey stuffing, he would sit on his wooden stool and pass me the celery and bread cubes one by one. "Mummy, when can I make the stuffing all by myself?" "When you're grown up, sweetheart. But don't worry, I'll always be here to teach you." How ironic that sentence sounds now. We lived in a big house in Beverly Hills. George had inherited a textile import business that grew tremendously. We were a well-off family, yes, but never flashy. George always said, "Money is kept quiet, Brenda, and spent with purpose." Robert studied at the private academy. He got good grades. He played soccer on Saturdays. On Sundays, we all went to church at St. Mark's. And afterward, we had pancakes and bacon at the same diner every time. George died when Robert was 23 years old. It was a massive heart attack. No warning, no goodbye. One morning, he was reading the newspaper with his coffee, and by noon, he was gone. I remember Robert hugged me so hard at the funeral I felt I would break. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm going to take care of you. I'll never leave you alone." And I believed him. After George's death, we discovered he had left everything in order. A clear will, a well-managed fortune, properties, investments, offshore accounts. The lawyer explained everything to us in his office. Robert and I inherited in equal parts. But since George knew I didn't understand much about business, he left Robert as the temporary administrator of everything. "It's just until you feel ready, Mom. I'm just going to make sure nothing is lost. This is yours. It's ours." I signed the papers without hesitation. Because he was my son. Because I trusted him as I had trusted his father. The first years were good. Robert moved back into the house. He said he didn't want to leave me alone. We hired Martha, a kind lady from the Midwest who cooked delicious food and became my daily companion. Robert would leave early to see to the businesses and come back late. Sometimes he would arrive tired, stressed. I would prepare him chamomile tea and heat up his dinner. "Is everything okay, son?" "Yes, Mom. It's just a lot of work, but don't worry. Everything is under control." But over time, something changed. Robert started coming home later and later. He stopped eating dinner with me. He stopped asking me how my day had been. When I asked him about the businesses, he would get tense. "Mum, I told you everything is fine. Why do you ask so much?" One day I asked to see the bank statements. I just wanted to understand. I just wanted to know if we were okay. He got angry. "Don't you trust me? After everything I do for you?" He made me feel guilty. He made me feel old, foolish, a burden. So I stopped asking. Months passed. Robert was barely home. When we were in the same room, he was on his phone. Always on his phone. One afternoon, while he was taking a shower, I heard his cell phone vibrate in the living room. It vibrated so many times that I went over without thinking. On the screen was a message. "Did you talk to the lawyer yet? We need to speed this up." I didn't recognize the number. I didn't understand the message. But something inside me, something very small, very fragile, began to break. That night, while eating dinner alone, I looked at my mother's rosary that I always kept in the dining room drawer. I took it in my hands, and without knowing why, I prayed. I prayed that what I was feeling was just the paranoia of an older woman. I prayed that my son would still be my son. But prayers are not always answered the way we want. Sometimes, God answers us by showing us the truth. And the truth, when it arrives, hurts more than any lie. 2 weeks after that message, I received an unexpected call. It was an invitation to give a talk in San Francisco, an event about women entrepreneurs. I was surprised because I had never been an active business person, but the organizer insisted. "Mrs. Miller, your story is inspiring. A woman who maintained her husband's legacy. We want you to share your experience." I said yes. Robert, for the first time in months, seemed relieved. "That's great, Mom. It will do you good to get out a bit. When is it?" "Friday. I leave in the afternoon and come back Sunday." Perfect. Too perfect. On Thursday night, I packed my suitcase. Martha helped me iron 2 dresses. I felt nervous, but also excited. It had been so long since I'd been out of town. On Friday morning, Robert had already left when I went down for breakfast. Martha drove me to the airport. I passed through security. I got to the boarding gate. I sat down with my purse and my rosary in my hand. Then I heard my name over the loudspeaker. "Mrs. Brenda Miller, please report to the service desk." I got up, confused. An immigration officer was waiting for me with a serious expression. "Ma'am, there's a problem with your passport. You can't board." "What?" "But I renewed it 6 months ago." "There's an inconsistency in the system. I'm sorry, but you have to resolve it before traveling." I tried to explain. I tried to call the event organizer, but there was nothing to be done. The plane took off without me. I returned home defeated, with my suitcases and the shame of having failed. It was almost 12 o'clock at night when I opened the door to my house. Everything was dark, silent. I left the suitcases at the entrance, took off my shoes, and then I heard it. Robert's voice, loud, clear, filled with an emotion I had never heard from him, was coming from the living room. I approached slowly without making a sound, and listened to the words that would change everything. "Mom's plane went down. The $18 million is ours, finally." I froze. My mother's rosary slipped from my hands and fell onto the hardwood floor. It made a soft sound, but in that silence it sounded like thunder. As I tell all this, I think about where you might be listening to me. Write the name of your city in the comments. The rosary fell to the floor, and at that moment I felt myself falling too, not physically, but inside, as if everything that had held my life together for 62 years crumbled in a single instant. I remained motionless, barely breathing, my back pressed against the hallway wall, and I kept listening. Yes, yes, they already confirmed it. The plane crashed near San Francisco. No survivors. It was on the news an hour ago. It was Robert's voice. My son. My only son. But he didn't sound like the boy who hugged me at his father's funeral. He didn't sound like the young man who promised to take care of me. He sounded euphoric. Listen to me well, Mandy. I'm going to the lawyer tomorrow. Since I'm the administrator of everything, there won't be a problem. The $18 million goes directly into my name. The properties, too. Everything. Mandy. I had heard that name before. Robert had introduced her to me 6 months ago. A young woman, blonde, with long nails and a cold smile. He said she was a business associate. I prepared coffee for her. She barely touched it. Now I understood why. And if they investigate? What if someone asks? That was Mandy's voice. She sounded anxious, but also calculating. They won't ask anything. My mother was 62. She was traveling alone. An accident. It's that simple. Besides, the will has been in my favor since my father died. She never bothered to change it. She never knew anything about finances. He laughs, both of them. They laughed at me. I felt such a sharp pain in my chest I thought I was having a heart attack. Like the one that killed George. I thought, I'm going to die here. This is where everything ends. But I didn't die. Something inside me broke. Yes, but I didn't die. I crouched down very slowly. I picked up the rosary from the floor. I squeezed it so hard the beads dug into my skin. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to enter that room. Not yet. Because if I entered, if I confronted him right then, my pain would turn into screams, into tears, into desperation. And I needed more than pain. I needed clarity. I moved backward, step by step, like a thief in my own house. I picked up my suitcases from the entrance. I opened the front door very slowly, millimeter by millimeter, praying it wouldn't squeak. It didn't. I went out. I closed the door without making a sound, and I walked to my car, as if I were in a dream. I don't know how long I drove. I only know that I ended up in the parking lot of a church. The same church where Robert had his first communion, where George and I got married. It was almost 2 o'clock in the morning. The church was closed, but the courtyard was illuminated by a faint light. I sat down on a stone bench, and there, alone, surrounded by silence, I began to understand. The last 2 years began to make sense, like when you put together a puzzle and suddenly all the pieces fit. The times Robert pulled me away from conversations with the lawyer. Mum, you rest. I'll take care of it. The papers he asked me to sign without fully explaining what they were. It's just paperwork, Mum. Trust me. The calls he would quickly end when I entered the room. The sudden trips, the coldness, the distance. Everything had been part of a plan. And I had been the fool who signed, who trusted, who stepped aside because I didn't understand business. I had become an obstacle. And obstacles are eliminated. The rosary was still in my hands. I looked at it under the yellow light of the courtyard. It was an old, worn rosary. My mother gave it to me on my wedding day. Brenda, when things get tough, pray, not for miracles, pray for strength. So I prayed. I didn't pray for Robert to change. I didn't pray to wake up from a nightmare. I prayed for the strength to do what I had to do. When the sun began to rise, I returned home. It was almost 7 o'clock in the morning. Martha had just arrived. She was in the kitchen making coffee. She saw me come in with the suitcases and was surprised. "Mrs. Miller, what happened? I thought you weren't coming back until Sunday." "There was a problem with the flight, Martha. I came back last night, but it was too late, and I didn't want to bother anyone. I slept at a friend's house." I lied. For the first time in my life, I lied easily. Martha nodded and continued preparing breakfast. I went up to my room. I took a long shower. I dressed slowly. When I went downstairs, Robert was in the dining room. He had his laptop open. He was looking at something on the screen. The news. Plane crashes in California. No survivors. He saw me and froze. The coffee cup in his hand started to tremble. His face. I will never forget his face. He turned completely pale. He opened his mouth. He tried to say something, but no sound came out. I stared at him, and with the calmest voice I could muster, I said, "Good morning, Robert. Did you sleep well?" He stood up so fast the chair fell to the floor. He took 2 steps back, and then he fainted. He fell to the floor like a rag doll. Martha ran out of the kitchen screaming, "Ma'am, ma'am, help me!" But I didn't move. I stood there, watching him on the floor, and I felt nothing. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel the maternal impulse to run and help him. I just felt a huge emptiness. Because the man lying on my dining room floor was no longer my son. He was a stranger who had celebrated my death. Martha splashed water on his face. She patted him. I called the ambulance, but with a calmness that even surprised me. Robert woke up before the paramedics arrived. He opened his eyes. He saw me, and he started to cry. "Mom, Mom, I thought that the plane—" "Yes, Robert, I know. You thought I had died." He fell silent. The paramedics arrived. They checked Robert. They said he was fine, that it had been a fainting spell from shock. It's normal. Seeing someone you thought was dead can cause a strong physical reaction. How ironic. When they left, Robert sat on the living room sofa. I sat down facing him. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. The silence lasted several minutes, until he finally spoke. "Mum, I can explain." "Explain what, Robert?" He got nervous. He started to stammer. It's just, last night I saw the news about the plane and I thought you were on that flight and I got really scared and I called Mandy because I was desperate and you celebrated?" He was speechless. "I heard you, Robert. I heard everything. I didn't get to the airport last night. I came back early. I was in the hallway." His face changed. The crying disappeared. And for a moment, just for a moment, I saw something in his eyes, something cold, something that scared me. But then it changed again. He was the frightened boy again, the repentant son. "Mum, no, it's not what you think. I was confused. Mandy and I have financial problems, and I thought horrible things, but I never actually wanted anything to happen to you. I swear." He was lying. I knew it, but I had no proof. I had nothing more than what I had heard one night. So I did something I never thought I would do. I smiled. "It's okay, son. I understand. You were stressed. Sometimes we think things we don't mean. Don't worry. Robert looked at me, confused, as if he didn't understand. You're not mad? I'm tired, Robert. I just want to rest. I got up. I went up to my room and, for the first time in 2 years, I locked the door. I sat on the bed. I took the rosary out of my pocket. And I thought, if he wants the money, he's going to have to keep waiting. Because I wasn't going to die. Not yet. And when I did die, it wouldn't be with his name on my will. But first, I needed to know how much damage he had already done. The next few days were strange. Robert tried to be nice to me. Too nice. He brought me breakfast in bed. He asked me how I had slept. He invited me out. I accepted everything. I smiled. I acted as if nothing had happened. But inside I was investigating. I called George's lawyer. I asked for an appointment. I told him I wanted to review the inheritance documents. Robert found out and turned pale. What for, Mum? Everything is in order. I just want to understand properly, that's all. The lawyer received me in his office a week later, and what I discovered left me breathless. I still wonder if I did the right thing. What would you have done in my place? The lawyer's office smelled like old books and cold coffee. Mr. Johnson had been George's friend. He had known him since college. He was a serious man, with an impeccable suit and hands always clasped on the desk. He greeted me with a sad smile. Brenda, how long has it been? How have you been? Fine, Mr. Johnson. Well, more or less. I sat down in front of him. I took the rosary out of my purse and put it on my lap. I needed to feel it close. I want to review George's inheritance documents. All of them. I want to know exactly what I have, where it is, and who has access. Mr. Johnson looked at me carefully. Something in my tone must have alerted him. Brenda, did something happen? I didn't know what to say. How do you explain to someone that your son celebrated your death? How do you tell them you've been sleeping with the door locked in your own house for a week? So I just said, I need to know the truth. The lawyer nodded slowly, opened a metal filing cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder. I'm going to be honest with you, Brenda. 6 months ago, Robert came to see me. He asked me to explain certain movements he could make with the accounts. I warned him that he needed your authorization for everything. He said he had it. My heart started racing. What kind of movements? The lawyer opened the folder and pulled out several documents. He placed them in front of me, one by one. 3 properties George left in your name were transferred to Robert's name. Here are the signatures, yours and his. I looked at the papers. It was my signature, but I didn't remember signing that. When did I sign this? 1.5 years ago. Don't you remember? I tried to remember. 1.5 years ago. Robert had taken me to sign some papers. He said they were tax updates. I signed without reading. I trusted him. Continue, Mr. Johnson. He pulled out another document. Significant withdrawals were also made from the investment accounts, large sums, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000. My mouth went dry. How much in total? The lawyer checked a sheet with numbers. In the last 2 years, approximately $4 million. $4 million. I felt the room spinning. And I authorized that. According to the bank records? Yes. Robert presented documents with your signature for every withdrawal. But I never knew about that. The lawyer closed the folder. He took off his glasses. He looked at me with something that looked like compassion and also guilt. Brenda, when George died, he asked me to look out for you, to make sure no one took advantage. But you signed a power of attorney, giving Robert almost total control. I warned you at the time. I told you it was too much power for one person, but you insisted. He was right. I remembered that day, 2 months after George's funeral. Robert told me we needed to organize everything so I wouldn't have to worry about anything. Mum, trust me. I'll take care of everything like Dad would have. And I signed. Because he was my son. Because I had just lost my husband and didn't have the strength for anything. Because I wanted to believe I wasn't alone. Mr. Johnson, how much is left? He checked another document. Of the $18 million George left, approximately $11 million remains. That's not counting the properties. $11 million. $7 million had disappeared, and I hadn't even noticed. Is there anything I can do? The lawyer sighed. Legally, it's complicated. You signed authorizations. Robert is your son and the legal administrator. Unless you can prove there was fraud or manipulation, there's not much that can be done without a long and painful lawsuit. What if I change the will? You can do that. Any time. But he doesn't have to know until, well, until you're gone. I nodded slowly. I want to change it, but I don't want Robert to find out. Can that be done? Yes. We can prepare a new will and keep it in my files. No one will know until it is executed. Then do it. Mr. Johnson looked at me with concern. Brenda, are you sure you're okay? Do you need help? Protection? I shook my head. I'm fine. I need time. I lied again. I wasn't fine. I was shattered. But I couldn't show weakness. Not yet. When I left that office, I walked through the New York streets aimlessly. I ended up in a park. I sat down on a bench under a cherry blossom tree. The purple flowers fell onto the grass like tears. And there, in that park, I cried. I cried for the son I had lost. Not to death, but to greed. I cried for the years I had spent raising him, loving him, sacrificing for him. I cried because everything had been in vain. When I returned home, it had already gotten dark. Robert was in the living room. He was waiting for me. Mom, where were you? I was worried. I went to the doctor. Routine checkups. Everything okay? Yes, everything fine. He kept looking at me, trying to read something on my face. I kept my gaze calm, almost empty. I'm going to have something to eat and then go to sleep. I'm tired. Okay, Mum. Rest. I went up to my room. I locked the door. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. Not directly, because if I did, he would find a way to manipulate me again, to convince me, to make me doubt. And I couldn't allow myself to doubt anymore. So I was going to do something different. I was going to act as if nothing had happened. I was going to be the trusting mother, the naive widow, and in the meantime, I was going to protect what was left. The next few days were an act. I smiled. I prepared breakfast. I asked about his day. How are the businesses, son? Good, Mum. Everything's going well. I'm glad. Your father would be proud. Every word was a lie, but a necessary lie. At night, when Robert was sleeping, I went down to his office. I looked through papers. I searched for documents. I took photos with my cell phone. I didn't quite know what I was looking for. I just knew I needed proof. I found receipts for very expensive restaurants, travel invoices, designer clothing purchases, all paid for with the family accounts. I found printed messages from Mandy. "Did you talk to the lawyer yet? We need that money before the end of the year." "Don't worry. My mother doesn't suspect a thing. She's old. She doesn't understand." Old. That word hurt me more than any other. To him, I was just an obstacle. A foolish old woman who was in the way of his fortune. I took photos of everything. I saved them in an email I sent to my own account, just in case. One night, while searching the drawers of his desk, I found something that chilled my blood. A manila envelope. Inside was a document, a life insurance policy, in my name, for $5 million. Beneficiary, Robert Miller. Issue date, 3 months ago. I looked at it for several minutes without understanding. I had never signed a life insurance policy, but there was my signature. And then I understood. Robert didn't just want me to die. He was expecting me to die, and he had put a price on my death. $5 million. I put the document away. I took photos, and I returned to my room with trembling legs. I sat on the bed. I took out the rosary, and I prayed. I prayed like I had never prayed before. Not for miracles, not for Robert to change. I prayed not to lose my sanity. I prayed for the strength to keep pretending. Because now I knew something terrible. If Robert discovered that I knew the truth, my life was in real danger. So I did the only thing I could do. Keep being the perfect mother, the naive widow, the woman who suspected nothing. A week later, Robert invited me to dinner. "Mum, I want us to go out. Just you and me, like before. We haven't spent time together in a long time." Part of me wanted to say no. It wanted to scream the truth at him. It wanted to ask him how he could look me in the eye after everything. But the other part, the part that was learning to survive, just smiled. "I'd love to, son." We went to a restaurant in Beverly Hills, one of those with white tablecloths and candles on the tables. Robert ordered wine. We toasted. "To us, Mum. To family. To family." The wine tasted bitter. During dinner, Robert talked about his plans, trips he wanted to take, investments he was considering. I listened, I smiled, I asked questions, and inside I was counting the days because Mr. Johnson had called me that morning. "Brenda, the new will is ready. When do you want to come sign it?" "Soon, Mr. Johnson. Very soon." While Robert was telling me about a trip to Europe he wanted to take with the investment money, I thought, enjoy this moment, son, because it's the last one where you think you won. That night, when we got home, Robert kissed my forehead. "I love you, Mum." And for the first time in my life, I didn't believe him. As I tell all this, I think about where you might be listening to me. Write the name of your city in the comments. There are days when life gives you signs, small, subtle, like cracks in a wall that seem insignificant, until one day the whole house collapses. I started seeing those cracks everywhere. 2 weeks after the dinner in Beverly Hills, Martha called me to my room. It was mid-morning. Robert had left early, as always. "Mrs. Miller, I'm sorry to bother you, but I found this while cleaning Mr. Roberts' office." She held out a crumpled piece of paper. It looked like it had been in the trash can. I unfolded it carefully. It was a handwritten note, a woman's handwriting. Sweet perfume. Too sweet. "My love, I can't take it anymore. We need to end this soon. I've been waiting for 2 years. You promised me that when she was gone, we could be together without hiding. I love you. M. Mandy." Martha looked at me with concern. Mum, I didn't want to get involved, but it seemed strange to me. And then I remembered the times that young lady comes to the house when you're not here. I felt a chill. How many times has she come, Martha? Many, Mum. Sometimes they stay in the living room. Sometimes they go up to Mr. Roberts' room. I stayed silent. Martha looked down. I'm sorry, Ma'am. I didn't want to hide anything from you. But Mr. Robert told me you already knew, that she was his girlfriend and that they would get married soon. Get married? With his dead mother's money? Thank you, Martha. You did the right thing by telling me. Martha left the room. I was left with the note in my hands. When she was gone. Not when I was ready to give him the money. Not when I decided to retire. When I was gone. Meaning, when I died. I put the note in the same envelope where I kept the photos of the life insurance and the documents I had found. The evidence was piling up, but I still didn't know what to do with it. That afternoon, I decided to do something I had never done: follow my own son. Robert told me he had a business meeting in downtown Los Angeles. He would leave at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and return late. At 3 o'clock 15 minutes, I took my car and followed him. I kept a safe distance. Thank goodness the traffic in Los Angeles is so chaotic it's easy to go unnoticed. Robert didn't go to downtown Los Angeles. He went to a residential area in Bel Air, a modern building, one of those with a doorman and private security. I parked on the other side of the street and waited. 10 minutes later, I saw Mandy leave the building. She was wearing a tight dress and high heels. She looked happy. Robert got out of the car. He hugged her. He kissed her. Not the way you kiss a business associate. He kissed her the way you kiss someone you share your life with, who you make plans with, who you count on for a future. A future that I, apparently, was preventing. They entered the building together. I stayed there, in the car, for 2 hours. When they left, they were laughing. Robert had a bottle of wine in his hand. They said goodbye with another long kiss. And then Robert took out his cell phone and made a call. I rolled down the window to try and listen. Although he was far away, I only managed to hear fragments. Yes, today. The lawyer said we can speed it up. I just need her to sign one last document. One last document. I felt my heart pound out of my chest. What document? For what? When Robert left, I wrote down the address of the building on a piece of paper. The name: Regency Towers, apartment 804. I returned home before him. Martha was preparing dinner. Ma'am, are you feeling well? You look pale. I'm fine, Martha. Just tired. I went up to my room. I closed the door. And then I did something I never thought I would do. I called a private investigator. I found one online, a man named Scott Jones. His website said, Absolute Discretion, Family and Corporate Investigations. I called him from my cell phone. He answered on the second ring. Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you? I didn't even know where to start. I need you to investigate someone. Who? I swallowed. My son. There was a brief silence. I understand. Can you give me more details? I told him everything, or almost everything. I told him about the money that had disappeared, about Mandy, about the life insurance, about the call I heard the night my plane supposedly crashed. The investigator listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, Ma'am, what you are describing to me is potentially serious. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Because what we find may hurt. It already hurts. I want to know the complete truth. All right. I need you to email me all the information you have. Full names, addresses, phone numbers, photos of documents, everything you've collected. How much time do you need? Give me 1 week, maybe 2. How much does it cost? He gave me a price. It was high, but I didn't care about the money anymore. It's settled. Do it. That night, Robert arrived late. He smelled of perfume, the same perfume from the note. He found me in the living room, knitting a sweater, something I had started doing to keep my hands busy and my mind calm. Hi, Mum. Did you eat dinner? Yes, son. Martha left me something. Perfect. He sat next to me. He watched me knit. Who is that sweater for? For you. Winter is coming. He fell silent. For a moment I saw something on his face, something similar to guilt, but it disappeared quickly. Thanks, Mum. Always so thoughtful. You're my son. It's what I do. He kissed me on the cheek and went up to his room. I kept knitting, stitch after stitch, as if each stitch was a prayer, as if knitting that sweater could bring back the boy he once was. But I knew it wasn't possible. The following days were a silent torture. Robert brought me papers to sign. Minor paperwork, he said. I reviewed them more carefully than ever. Some were legitimate, others not so much. Mum, this is just to renew a building permit on the Miami house. I read the document. It didn't mention anything about building permits. It was an authorization to transfer the complete property into his name. Robert, this says I'm ceding the property, not renewing permits. He became tense. Oh, yes, it's a legal technicality. It has to do with taxes. Don't worry. I'm not going to sign this. His face changed. For a second, I saw anger. Why not? Don't you trust me anymore? It's not that, son. It's just that I want to understand properly before signing. But, Mum, I've taken care of you all this time. I've managed everything. And now you spring this on me? I just want to read it carefully. Maybe I'll take it to Mr. Johnson so he can explain it to me. Robert stood up abruptly. You know what? Forget it. It doesn't matter. I'll figure it out another way. He left the room, stomping his feet. I was left with the document in my hands, and I knew I had made a mistake. I had shown him that I was doubting, that I was waking up, and that was dangerous. That night I heard voices in Robert's room. He was on the phone. He was speaking quietly but angrily. I went up the stairs slowly. I stood near his door. No, Mandy, she didn't sign. She started asking questions. Yes, I know. This is getting complicated. I can't force her. If she suspects something, she can go to the lawyer and change everything. We need to be smarter. Silence. He was listening. No, we can't wait that long. We've been doing this for 2 years. I'm fed up too. Look, let me think. There has to be another way. Another way? Another way to do what? I went down the stairs without making a sound. My heart was beating so hard I felt it was going to betray me. I entered my room. I locked the door, and I took my mother's rosary in my hands. Mum, if you are watching me from wherever you are, help me. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out of this. The next day, I received a call from the investigator, Scott Jones. Mrs. Miller, I found something. We need to meet. Can you come to my office this afternoon? What did you find? I'd rather tell you in person. I said yes. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was sitting in his office, a small office with a desk full of papers and an old computer. Scott was a man of about 50 years old, with a serious face but kind eyes. He placed a folder in front of me. Ma'am, what I'm about to show you is not easy. Are you prepared? I nodded. He opened the folder. The first photo was of Robert and Mandy entering a bank. The second was of both of them leaving a notary's office. The third was a document, a marriage certificate. Robert and Mandy were married. They had been married for 6 months. I felt the floor open beneath my feet. Married? Yes, ma'am. They got married in a civil ceremony in Las Vegas. Discreet. No guests. But he never told me anything. Scott pulled out more documents. There's more. Mandy has significant debts. 3 maxed-out credit cards. A personal loan of $200,000 that she hasn't paid. And her family? Well, her family has legal problems. Her father is being investigated for fraud. He showed me newspaper clippings, notes about Mandy's father being involved in real estate scams. They need money, ma'am. A lot of money. And fast. Scott pulled out another photo. This one completely broke me. It was Robert and Mandy at a car dealership, looking at a Porsche. The salesman was showing them papers. This photo is from 3 days ago. They are buying a luxury car. Price, $180,000. It's going to be paid for from an account in your name. I couldn't breathe. Is there more? Scott nodded sadly. Ma'am, I found something more serious. Your son has been researching options to institutionalize you in a geriatric residence. Expensive places, yes, but residences for people with advanced dementia. What? Apparently he's building a case to declare you mentally incapacitated, that you need special care. If he succeeds, he would have total legal control over everything without needing your signature. I was speechless. Everything made sense now. The papers he brought me to sign, the insistence, the rush. And when I started to resist, he changed strategy to declare me incompetent, lock me up, and take everything. Ma'am, there's one more thing you should know. Scott pulled out a final document. Your son took out a loan using one of your properties as collateral. A loan for $1 million. If he doesn't pay it in the next 3 months, you lose the property. Which property? The Miami house. The one your husband bought for you when you got married. The house where George and I spent our honeymoon. The house where Robert learned to swim in the pool. The house full of memories. Robert had mortgaged it, and it was about to be lost. I closed the folder. I couldn't look anymore. What should I do, Mr. Jones? That's up to you, ma'am. I just gave you the information. But if you ask my opinion, you need to protect yourself. Legally. And maybe physically. Physically? When people are desperate, they can do unpredictable things. And your son is very desperate. I left that office like a ghost. I drove through the city aimlessly. I cried until I had no tears left. And then, in the middle of the traffic on the freeway, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep pretending anymore. I wasn't going to wait. Because if I waited any longer, maybe there wouldn't be time. I had to act. And I had to do it soon. That night I called Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, I need to see you tomorrow early, and I need you to prepare something more than a will. What do you need, Brenda? I need to save what's left, and I need my son to never touch another dollar of what was George's. Understood. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I hung up the phone. I looked at the rosary on my nightstand, and I whispered, "Forgive me, son, but this is over." I still wonder if I did the right thing. What would you have done in my place? I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, sitting on the bed, with the folder the investigator had given me on my lap. I opened every document. I read every photo. I reviewed every detail. Robert secretly married. Debts. Plans to institutionalize me. The Miami house mortgaged. $7 million disappeared, and I, who had signed everything, who had trusted, who had given up control of my life because I believed my son would take care of me. The complete truth was in front of me, clear, brutal, undeniable. But what hurt the most wasn't the money. It was the deception. It was knowing that every hug had been calculated, every "I love you, Mum" had been a lie. Every gesture of concern had been an act, because to him, I was just an obstacle between his ambition and his new life. I looked at the clock. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. In 4 hours, I had the appointment with Mr. Johnson. I got up. I took a long bath. I dressed carefully. A navy blue suit that George had given me years ago. Pearl earrings. My hair pulled back. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. I was no longer the naive widow, the trusting mother. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had learned to survive. I took my mother's rosary and put it in my purse, along with the investigator's folder. I went down the stairs. Martha was in the kitchen making coffee. "Good morning, Mom. Are you going out?" "Yes, Martha. I have an important appointment." "Does Mr. Robert already know?" "No, and don't tell him I left. If he asks, tell him I went to the doctor." Martha nodded. She had learned not to ask questions. I left the house before Robert woke up. The morning traffic was dense. The streets were full of people going to work, street vendors, children in school uniforms. Life went on, normal, every day, while mine was collapsing and rebuilding at the same time. I arrived at Mr. Johnson's office at 8 o'clock 30 minutes. I was the first to arrive. The secretary offered me coffee. I accepted, but didn't touch it. I just needed to have something in my hands. At 9 o'clock sharp, the lawyer received me in his office. He closed the door. He sat down across from me. "Brenda, tell me, what happened?" I took out the folder. I put it on his desk. "What happened is I hired a private investigator and discovered the complete truth." The lawyer opened the folder. He reviewed each document in silence. When he finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "My God, Brenda, this is worse than I imagined." "I know." "Does Robert know that you know?" "No. I've been acting as if nothing happened. But I can't continue like this. I need to act now, before it's too late." The lawyer nodded. "All right. We're going to do the following. First, we're going to completely change your will. Robert will receive nothing, not a dollar. Second, we're going to revoke all the powers of attorney you gave him. You will regain total control of your accounts, properties, and investments. Third, we're going to start a forensic audit of everything he's managed in these 2 years. We need to document every movement, every withdrawal, every transaction. And the Miami house, the one he mortgaged, we're going to pay it off. Settle that debt before you lose it. And then we're going to transfer the property into a trust in your name, a trust that Robert cannot touch." "How long will all this take?" "If we hurry, 2 weeks, maybe 3. "And if Robert tries something during that time?" The lawyer looked at me seriously. "That's why I'm also going to suggest something else, something you might not like." "What?" "That you leave your house temporarily while all this is resolved. It's for your safety." "I won't leave my house. It's my house. George and I built it together." "Brenda, I understand. But your son is desperate, and desperate people can do unpredictable things." "I know," the investigator told me, "but I won't run away from my own home. I won't give him that satisfaction." The lawyer sighed. "All right, but at least be careful. Don't eat or drink anything he prepares. Don't be alone with him in isolated places. And if you feel like something is wrong, call me. Anytime. I nodded. We spent the next 3 hours working. I signed documents. I revoked powers. We drafted a completely new will. All the money that remained, all the properties, all the investments were going to be donated. To charitable institutions, to orphanages, to retirement homes for low-income seniors, anywhere the money could do good, except to Robert. Are you completely sure about this, Brenda? There's no turning back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. When we finished, the lawyer put all the documents in a safe. No one will know about this until, well, until it's necessary. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Brenda, I'm so sorry you're going through this. George was my friend, and I know he would be proud of how brave you are. I left that office feeling something strange. It wasn't relief. It wasn't satisfaction. It was peace. A cold peace. Sad. But peace nonetheless. Because for the first time in a long time, I had taken control of my life. I drove back home. But first I took a detour. I went to the church. The same one where I had sat that night after hearing Robert celebrate my death. It was noon. The church was almost empty. Only an elderly woman praying in the first row and a priest arranging the altar flowers. I sat down on a back pew. I took the rosary out of my purse, and I prayed. I prayed for my son, for the boy he once was. I prayed for George, for his soul, for his legacy. And I prayed for myself, for the strength to do what was coming. Because I knew the hardest part was still to come. I knew I would have to look him in the eyes. I would have to confront him. And I would have to tell him the truth. When I finished praying, I stayed seated in silence, looking at the altar, looking at the crucified Christ. And I thought, even Jesus was betrayed by someone he loved. Maybe suffering was part of life, inevitable, universal. But so was resurrection. I left the church with the sun shining brightly. The sky was clear, an intense blue. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful, as if the world didn't know my life had just changed forever. I arrived home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Robert was in the living room, with his laptop, talking on the phone. When he saw me, he quickly hung up. Mom, where were you? I looked for you this morning. I went to the doctor. Some tests. Everything okay? Yes, everything fine. He looked at me suspiciously, as if trying to read something on my face. Are you sure? You look different. Just tired. I went up to my room without saying more. I closed the door. And then I saw something I hadn't seen before. On my nightstand, next to the lamp, there was a bottle of pills. It wasn't mine. I picked it up. I read the label. Clonazepam, Domiomi, for anxiety and sleep disorders. Where had that come from? I had never taken clonazepam. I had never been prescribed it. I opened the nightstand drawer. I checked. There were more pills. A complete blister pack, hidden under some magazines. I felt a chill. Robert had put those pills there. Why? And then I remembered something. 3 days ago, Robert had made me some tea. He insisted I drink it. It'll help you sleep better, Mum. You look very stressed. I drank it. And that night, I slept like never before. A deep, heavy sleep, from which I woke up confused and with a headache. Had he been drugging me? The thought made my stomach churn. I took the pill bottle and put it in my purse. Evidence. I went down the stairs. Robert was in the kitchen. Mom, do you want me to prepare you something for dinner? No thanks, I'm not hungry. But you must eat something. Look, I had Martha prepare some vegetable soup. Your favorite. No, really, I'm fine, Robert insisted. At least some tea. I'll make you some. No, Robert. I told you no. My voice came out louder than I intended. Robert froze. He stared at me. Is something wrong, Mum? No, nothing. Why have you been strange, distant lately? I'm just tired. Or suspicious. The air became tense. Why would I be suspicious? Robert approached me. His voice changed. It became cold. I don't know, Mum. You tell me. I looked him in the eyes, those eyes that once looked at me with love. And at that moment I knew that he knew. He didn't know exactly what or how much, but he knew something had changed. No, son, I have nothing to tell you. Are you sure? Sure. We stood looking at each other in silence, like two strangers sizing each other up, until Martha came in with the grocery bags and broke the moment. Robert smiled, that fake smile he had perfected. Well, if you need anything, I'm here. He went upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen, trembling. Martha looked at me worriedly. Mom, are you all right? Yes, Martha, I'm fine. But I wasn't, because I had just understood something terrible. Robert suspected. And if he suspected, he was going to act. And I didn't know how much time I had before he did something drastic. That night I didn't eat anything that came from the kitchen. I went out and bought a sandwich at a convenience store, locked my door, put a chair against the knob, just in case, and slept with my cell phone in my hand, with Mr. Johnson's number on speed dial, because I no longer knew what my son was capable of. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. The next few days were a game of cat and mouse. Robert watched me. I watched him. Neither of us said anything, but we both knew something was brewing. One morning I went down for breakfast and found an envelope on the dining table. I opened it. It was a brochure for a geriatric residence. Sunset Villa, specialized care for seniors with special needs. There was a handwritten note. Mum, I've been thinking. Maybe it would be good for you to consider a place like this, with nurses 24 hours a day, activities, company. You could be happier. Think about it. With love, Robert. I crumpled the paper. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. If you don't cooperate, I'll lock you up. But what Robert didn't know was that I was already ahead of him. I called Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, I found pills in my room, and a brochure for geriatric residences. He's preparing for something. Brenda, the legal papers are ready. We just need the bank signatures to transfer everything. Give me 3 more days, just 3 days. And what if I don't have 3 days? Then you have to leave that house, now. I hung up the phone. I looked around. My house, my home, the place where I had raised my son, where I had loved my husband, where I had built my life. And I thought, no, I won't run away. I've run enough. That afternoon, I made another decision. I decided that I wasn't going to wait for Robert to act anymore. I was going to act first. And the moment had arrived. Because that night I was going to confront him. I was going to tell him the truth, that I knew everything, that he had lost, and that he would never, ever touch another dollar of what was his father's. I ate dinner alone in my room, a sandwich I bought on the street, bottled water that I opened myself. I put on the same blue suit I wore to the lawyer. I did my hair. I put on light makeup. I took my mother's rosary and squeezed it in my hands. Mum, give me strength, because tonight everything ends. I went downstairs at 8 o'clock at night. Robert was in the living room watching television. I sat down across from him, and with the calmest voice I could, I said, Robert, we need to talk. He turned off the television. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something that froze my blood. Fear. The silence between us lasted several seconds. Robert looked at me. I looked at him. The only sound in the living room was the ticking of the wall clock that George had bought on a trip to Boston. That clock that had marked so many moments of our family life. Now it marked the end. Talk about what, Mum? His voice sounded cautious, like someone walking on thin ice. I took a deep breath. I squeezed the rosary in my jacket pocket. About the truth, Robert. About the whole truth. He settled into the sofa. He crossed his legs. He tried to look relaxed, but his hands trembled slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I looked him directly in the eyes, without blinking. I know you're married to Mandy. I know you've been secretly married for 6 months. I know she has huge debts. I know her family has legal problems. I know you mortgaged the Miami house without telling me. I know $7 million has disappeared in 2 years. I know you bought a life insurance policy in my name for $5 million. I know you wanted to institutionalize me in a geriatric residence by declaring me incompetent. And I know... My voice cracked a little, but I continued. And I know that the night you thought my plane had crashed, you celebrated. You celebrated my death, Robert. I heard you. I was in the hallway. I heard every word. The colour drained from his face. He turned completely pale. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he said, Mom, No. I raised my hand. I don't want excuses. I don't want lies. Not anymore. I just want you to tell me one thing. Why? Why did you do this to me? Robert lowered his gaze. His hands squeezed the armrests of the sofa. When he looked up at me again, his eyes were wet. Because it was never enough. What? Everything Dad left me, everything we had, it was never enough. He stood up from the sofa. He started pacing the room. The words now poured out in a torrent. My whole life I lived under his shadow. Your father did this. Your father built that. Your father, he. And me. I was just the son who had to measure up. Do you know what that feels like? Robert. No, let me finish. His voice rose. I had never seen him like this, uncontrolled, desperate. When Dad died, everyone expected me to be like him, to manage the businesses, to take care of the money, to be the man of the family. But I'm not him, Mum. I never was. And the businesses started to fail. I made bad investments. I lost money. A lot of money. And why didn't you tell me? I would have understood. We would have sought help together. Robert let out a bitter laugh. Tell you? Tell the perfect widow that her son was a failure? I couldn't. I couldn't disappoint your image of me so badly. So you decided to steal from me. You decided to lie to me. You decided to wish for my death. I didn't wish for your death, he really yelled. I heard quick footsteps. Martha appeared in the kitchen doorway, startled. Mum, is everything all right? Yes, Martha, you can go back. Thank you. Martha looked at me uncertainly, but nodded and returned to the kitchen. Robert ran his hands through his hair. He was breathing heavily. When you heard that call, I was in shock. I had seen the news about the plane and I thought you were on it. It was awful. And yes, I called Mandy. But not because I wanted you to be dead. It was, it was a reaction, a moment of weakness. You said, finally. You said the $18 million was yours, finally. That's not shock, Robert. That's relief. He fell silent. And then, when I came back alive, you fainted. Do you know what I thought at that moment? I thought it was because you were happy to see me, that it was excitement. But it wasn't. Was it? You fainted from horror, from fear, because your plan had failed. There was no plan. Robert, you were drugging me. I took the pill bottle out of my pocket and threw it onto the coffee table. It bounced and fell to the floor. Clonazepam. In my room, in my tea. How many times did you drug me? How many times did you make me sign documents while I was confused? Robert looked at the bottle. He didn't deny it. I just wanted you to sleep better. You were stressed. Lie. My voice was cold now, emotionless. You wanted to confuse me. You wanted it to seem like I was losing my mind, so that when you tried to institutionalize me, it would be easier, so the doctors would see a senile old woman who took pills and couldn't remember things. Robert slumped onto the sofa, buried his face in his hands, and started to cry. Not like the boy who cried when he fell off his bike. Not like the young man who cried at his father's funeral. He cried like someone who knows he has lost everything. I'm sorry, Mum. I'm so sorry. I didn't want it to come to this. But the debts, Mandy, her family, everything got out of control, and I didn't know how to get out. I walked over to him. I sat in the chair across from the sofa. And at that moment, I felt something strange. Compassion. Not for what he had done, but for what he had become. A broken, weak man, trapped in his own lies. Robert, look at me. He lifted his face. His eyes were red, his face wet. Do you know what hurts the most? It's not the money. It's not the properties. It's that you saw me as an obstacle, as something to get rid of. I gave you life. I raised you. I loved you with everything I had. And to you, I was just a foolish old woman who was in your way. No, Mum. Never. Yes. Yes, you did. I saw the messages. She's old. She doesn't understand. Those were your words. Robert closed his eyes. He couldn't even look at me. I'm sorry. Don't ask me for forgiveness, Robert, because I can't give it to you. Not now. Maybe never. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked outside. The city lights twinkled in the distance. Yesterday I went to Mr. Johnson. I changed my will. Everything, absolutely everything that remains is going to be donated. To charitable institutions, to orphanages, to retirement homes for low-income people, to any place where the money can do the good your father would have wanted. I heard Robert stand up abruptly. What? No, you can't do that. I already did. I also revoked all the powers of attorney I gave you. You no longer have access to anything. The accounts, the properties, the investments, everything is blocked. And the Miami house, the one you mortgaged, is already paid off, with my money, and it's in a trust that you can never touch. Robert stood motionless, processing. But I need that money. Mandy's debts, the loans. I'm going to lose everything. Yes, you are going to lose everything, just as I lost everything. The difference is that what I lost cannot be recovered. I lost my son. I lost trust. I lost years of my life believing in someone who was just using me. I turned to him. And now I want you to leave. What? I want you to leave this house, tonight. Pack your things and go. Mom, you can't be serious. This is my house too. No, this is the house your father bought. With his money, with his effort, and he left it to me. You were only a temporary administrator, and that privilege is over. Robert took a step toward me. His face changed. It was no longer pain. It was rage. This is your fault. What? Yes, yours. If you weren't so controlling, if you weren't so attached to Dad's money, if you had given me my share when you should have. Your share? My God, Robert. Everything was your share. Half of everything. $18 million, properties, and it wasn't enough. Because greed is never enough. I deserved more. I was his son. I maintained the businesses. No, Robert, you ruined them, and then you stole from me to cover your failures. We stood face to face, two strangers, two enemies. He was no longer my son, and I was no longer his mother. We were just two people who had lost everything. If you don't leave tonight voluntarily, I will call a lawyer tomorrow to initiate legal proceedings. And believe me, with all the evidence I have, it won't take long. Robert clenched his jaw. You know what? I'm leaving. I'm leaving, and I hope I never see you again. The feeling is mutual. He went up the stairs, stomping. I heard drawers opening, things being thrown, curses. I stayed in the living room, sitting, with the rosary in my hands. Martha appeared again. Mum, is Mr. Robert really leaving? Yes, Martha. And are you all right? I looked at the rosary, the worn beads, the same ones my mother had prayed over so many times. I'm going to be fine. Eventually. Half an hour later, Robert came down with two large suitcases. He stopped at the foot of the stairs. We looked at each other one last time. I waited. I don't know what I was waiting for. An apology? Remorse? Some humanity? But what I saw in his eyes was only resentment. You're going to regret this. No, Robert. The one who is going to regret it is you. He walked toward the door. He opened it. He paused for a second. Goodbye, Mum. I didn't answer. He closed the door. And he was gone. I heard his car start, the sound of the engine fading away, and then silence. An enormous silence. Empty. Absolute. I stayed there, sitting, in the living room where we had eaten dinner so many times, where I had watched my son grow up, where I had laughed with George, where we had been a family, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried throughout this entire nightmare. Because it's one thing to discover betrayal, it's another to lose your son. And even though he had hurt me so much, even though he had used me and lied and stolen from me, he was still my son, the baby I held in my arms, the boy who called me mommy and hugged me tight, the young man who cried when his father died. All of that was lost, dead, as if he had truly died in that plane. Martha sat down next to me. She hugged me without saying anything. She just stayed there. And I let the crying come out. All the pain, all the rage, all the loss. I cried until I had no tears left. When I finally calmed down, Martha prepared me some tea. This one I could drink, without fear. Mrs. Miller, you did the right thing. Yes, yes. Sometimes love also means letting go, even if it hurts. I nodded. I drank the tea slowly. It was hot, comforting. I looked at the clock. It was almost 11 o'clock at night. Martha, you can go rest. I'm going to stay here a little longer. Are you sure? Yes, thank you. For everything. Martha went up to her room. I stayed in the living room. I turned off the lights. I only left the lamp on in the corner. and I sat in the darkness, thinking, remembering, making peace with everything I had lost. The house felt different now, more empty, but also more mine. There were no more lies, there was no more danger, there was no longer someone waiting for me to die. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I stood up, I walked around the house, I touched the walls, the furniture, the photographs. I stopped in front of a photo of George, Robert, and me, taken in Miami. Robert was about 10 years old. We were smiling, happy. George, I don't know if I did the right thing, but I did what I could. I hope wherever you are, you understand. I kissed my hand and touched the photograph. I went up to my room. For the first time in weeks, I didn't lock the door. There was nothing to fear. I lay down. I looked at the ceiling, and I thought, this is the end. It's over. Now I can start to heal. But I was wrong, because the end had not yet arrived. And karma was just beginning its work. The following days were strange, silent, solitary, but also peaceful. I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to guard every word. I didn't have to check my food. I could be myself. Mr. Johnson called me. Brenda, Robert came to my office. He was furious. He threatened to sue, to contest the will. He said you were senile and that someone had manipulated you. And what did you tell him? That if he tried anything, we would present all the evidence of his fraud, the unauthorized withdrawals, the falsified signatures, the life insurance, everything. I reminded him that fraud is a felony, that he could go to jail. And what did he say? He fell silent, and he left. Good. Brenda. Be careful. Desperate people do unpredictable things. I know, but I'm no longer afraid. I did what I had to do, and now everything is in the hands of the universe. I hung up the phone. I looked out the window. The sky was grey. It looked like it was going to rain. And I thought about Robert. Where would he be? With Mandy? In a hotel somewhere? Planning his next move? I didn't know. And part of me didn't even want to know anymore. Because I had done my part. I had protected what was left of George's legacy. I had defended my dignity. I had closed the door. And now all I could do was live, with the peace of knowing that, even if it hurt, even if I cried every night, even if I missed the boy who was once my son, I had done the right thing. And that would have to be enough. I still wonder if I did the right thing. What would you have done in my place? 3 weeks passed since Robert left the house. 3 weeks of silence. He didn't call. He didn't write. He didn't show up. It was as if he had never existed. At first, every time the phone rang, my heart raced. I thought, it's him. He's going to apologize. He's going to say he regrets it. But it was never him. In time, I stopped waiting. The house felt different now, more peaceful, more organized. Even the air seemed cleaner. Martha noticed the change. Mrs. Miller, you look more serene. Serene? Yes, like a weight has been lifted. She was right. The weight of the lie, the weight of fear, the weight of pretending. All of that was gone with Robert. And although it still hurt, although there were nights when I cried in my room, although I missed the child who would never return, I could breathe. One November morning, I woke up early. The sun was coming through my bedroom window. It was cold. I got up. I put on a robe. I went down to the kitchen. Martha was already making coffee. The smell filled the whole house. Good morning, Mum. Good morning, Martha. I ate breakfast slowly. Toast, coffee with cream. a piece of fruit, simple things, but which I now truly savoured, because I was no longer afraid my food was drugged. I no longer had to check every cup, every plate, every drink. I was free. After breakfast, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went for a walk. I took my purse, my mother's rosary, and walked through the streets of Beverly Hills. There was a coffee shop on the corner, a small place, with wooden tables and plants in the windows. I went in. I ordered a coffee. I sat by the window, and I watched the people pass by. Ladies with their grocery bags, students with backpacks, couples holding hands, elderly people walking slowly. Life went on, normal, beautiful, simple, and I was part of it. I wasn't the rich widow locked in her house. I wasn't the deceived mother. I wasn't the victim. I was just Brenda, a 62-year-old woman, drinking coffee, watching the world. And it was okay. While drinking my coffee, I thought about Robert. Where would he be? How would he be? Part of me wanted to know. Part of me didn't, because I knew that knowing would mean feeling, and I had already felt enough. But the universe has strange ways of answering questions you didn't ask. That afternoon, I received a call. It was Mr. Johnson. Brenda, I need to inform you of something. Robert filed a lawsuit. He wants to contest the will. He says you were under undue influence, that someone manipulated you. I sighed. And what do you need from me? Nothing for now. We have all the evidence, the documents, the investigators' recordings, the bank records. His lawsuit has no merit, but the process can be long, months, maybe a year. It's okay. Do what you have to do. Aren't you worried? No, because I know the truth, and the truth always comes out. I hung up the phone, and I felt something strange. Peace. Not anger, not fear, not anxiety, just peace. Because I had learned something important in these weeks. I couldn't control what Robert did. I couldn't control his decisions, his lies, his rage, but I could control how I responded. And I had decided to respond with dignity, without revenge, without hatred, without bitterness. Because if I let hatred consume me, he would have won. The following days, I continued with my new routine. Morning walks, coffee at the coffee shop, visits to the church. I took up knitting again. I finished the sweater I had started for Robert. But when I finished it, I realized it no longer made sense to keep it. So one afternoon, while walking in the park, I saw a homeless man. He was sitting on a bench, shivering from the cold. I approached him. "Excuse me, sir. I made this sweater. It's wool. It's very warm. Do you want it?" The man looked at me with teary eyes. "For me?" "Yes, for you." He took the sweater with trembling hands. He put it on. It was a little big, but it didn't matter. "God bless you, Mom. God bless you." I smiled. He already has. I walked back home feeling something warm in my chest. That sweater that had started with love for my son now kept someone who truly needed it warm, and in some way, that made it more valuable. A week later, I decided to do something more. I called Mr. Johnson. "Mr. Johnson, I want to start the donations. I don't want to wait until I die. I want to see them in action." "Are you sure?" "Completely. How much can I donate without affecting my livelihood?" We did the calculations. With what was left, after paying off the Miami mortgage and other expenses, I had approximately $10 million. I decided to donate 3 parts of $5 million. I want $1 million to go to St. Joseph's Children's Home. It's an orphanage in Queens. George and I used to donate there every year. Perfect. Another $1 million for the Missionaries of Charity Senior Center, where they care for elderly people without family. I continued listing. Children's Hospital, Foundation for Women Victims of Violence, college scholarships for low-income youth. Each donation had a purpose. Each $1 million was going to change lives. And do you want it to be done in your name? No. Anonymous. I don't need recognition. I just want the money to do good. As you wish. I'll start the paperwork. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. The money that Robert had lied, stolen, and betrayed for was now going to save lives, give opportunities, create hope. And he would never know it. Because I wasn't doing it for revenge, I was doing it because it was the right thing to do. Because that money wasn't mine, it was George's. And I know this is what he would have wanted. 2 weeks after starting the donations, I received a letter. It was from St. Joseph's Children's Home. I opened it with trembling hands. Dear benefactress, we have no words to thank you for your generous donation. Thanks to your support, we will be able to remodel the facilities, hire additional teachers, and provide medical care to all our children. You have changed 52 lives. These children now have a future. God bless you always. I cried reading that letter. But they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of healing. Because for the first time in months, I felt that something good had come out of all this. I put the letter away in my nightstand drawer, next to my mother's rosary. That night, I prayed. I didn't pray for Robert. I didn't pray for him to come back. I didn't pray for him to change. I prayed for him to find his own path, even if that path was far from me. I prayed for life to teach him what I couldn't. And I prayed for myself, to keep going, to heal, to live, because I had understood something important. Revenge was not for me. Justice was not in my hands. Karma would do its work, without me doing anything, without me intervening. I just had to live my life, with dignity, with purpose, with peace, and let time do its thing. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months. Martha and I found a routine. We cooked together. We watched shows in the afternoons. We laughed. I invited friends I had neglected for years. Women my age who had also lost husbands, who had also faced betrayals, who had also learned to get up. We formed a prayer group. We met on Thursdays at my house. We shared stories. We prayed. We supported each other. And slowly, very slowly, I began to heal. Not completely, because there are scars that never disappear, but enough to wake up every morning without fear, enough to truly smile, enough to understand that what I lost no longer defines me. One December afternoon, I was in the garden. I had planted roses, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for. I was watering them when I heard the doorbell. Martha went to open it. She came back with an envelope. "Mom, this arrived." It was a letter, with no return address. I opened it. It was from Robert. For a moment, my heart raced, but I took a deep breath. "You no longer have power over me." I read the letter. "Mum, I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I regret everything. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every moment I made you feel less than you are. I am facing the consequences of my actions. Mandy left me when she found out there was no more money. Creditors are chasing me. I lost the apartment. I lost everything. And I deserve it. You gave me love. And I gave you pain. You gave me trust. And I gave you betrayal. There are no words enough to apologize. I just want you to know that, despite everything, you were the best mother I could have. And I was the worst son. I'm sorry. With all my heart. Robert. I folded the letter. I put it in my pocket. And I felt nothing. Not rage. Not satisfaction. Not joy for his suffering. Just acceptance. Because this was what had to happen. The natural consequences of his actions. Karma collecting its debt. And I didn't have to do anything. Just live. Just heal. Just continue. I stayed in the garden looking at the roses. They were still small, but they were growing, like me, slowly, patiently, with dignity. And that was enough. That night I took my mother's rosary, I squeezed it in my hands, and I whispered, "Thank you for the strength, for the clarity, for the peace." Because I had learned that sometimes the greatest victory is not defeating the other, it's finding yourself. And I had found myself. Broken, yes. Scarred, yes. Hurting, yes. But also stronger, wiser, freer, and ready for what was next. Because I knew that life would continue, that there would be more days, more challenges, more pain, but also more joys, more love, more purpose, and I would be ready, because I had survived the worst. And now I could live the best. I still wonder if I did the right thing. What would you have done in my place? 6 months passed since Robert's letter. 6 months of silence, of peace, of rebuilding. I had learned to live with the absence, with the void left by a son who leaves or who is lost. Because Robert hadn't died. But the son I knew, he had died. And I had learned to make peace with that. My days now had a new rhythm. Mornings in the garden, tending my roses, afternoons with my prayer group, Fridays visiting the orphanage where I had donated. Seeing those children smile, play, learn, that filled a space in my heart that I thought would never heal. One of the teachers at the orphanage told me something I will never forget. "Mrs. Miller, you are an angel to these children. You gave them a future." I just smiled. They gave me a purpose. And it was true. The money that Robert had betrayed everything for was now building lives, feeding hopes, healing wounds. It was ironic, and beautiful, and just. One May afternoon, I was at my usual coffee shop, reading a book, drinking my coffee. Martha was at home preparing dinner for the prayer meeting that night. Then I saw him. Robert. He was walking on the sidewalk across the street, alone, in wrinkled clothes, his hair unkempt, his shoulders slumped. He wasn't the man who had left my house months ago, proud, angry, resentful. He was a shadow. My first instinct was to hide, to look away, to pretend I hadn't seen him. But I didn't. I stood still, watching. He went into a grocery store. He bought something small. Bread? It looked like it. He came out. He kept walking. He walked like someone who has nowhere to go, without rush, aimlessly. And at that moment, I felt something I didn't expect. Pity. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't joy at seeing him like that. It wasn't that feeling of, "you deserve it," that sometimes arises when we see someone who hurt us fall. It was just pity. Because despite everything he had done to me, he was still the child I once held in my arms. And seeing him like that, lost, broken, alone, it hurt. I didn't call his name. I didn't cross the street. I didn't do anything. Because I had learned that sometimes love is also letting go, letting everyone face their own consequences, letting life teach what we couldn't. I finished my coffee. I paid. I left. And I went home. That night, during this prayer meeting, one of my friends, Margaret, shared something. I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness, about how to forgive someone who hurt us greatly, and I realized something. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean reconciling. Forgiving means letting go, letting the weight of resentment go away, so that we can live in peace. Her words resonated with me. That night, in my room, I took my mother's rosary, and I prayed for Robert, not for him to come back, not for him to ask for forgiveness, not for things to be different. I prayed for him to find his path, his own peace, his own redemption, because I had already found mine. 2 weeks later, I received another call. It was a woman. Her voice sounded young, nervous. Mrs. Miller? Yes. Who is speaking? My name is Hannah. I'm, well, I was Robert's girlfriend, before Mandy. My heart raced. What do you need, Hannah? I need to talk to you. It's about Robert. He's very bad. I closed my eyes. What happened? Can we meet? I prefer to tell you in person. I accepted. We arranged to meet the next day at a cafe near my house. Hannah was a woman in her early 30s, pretty, with sad eyes. We sat down. She ordered a tea. I ordered a coffee. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Mum. I know you don't know me, and that you probably don't want to hear about Robert. What happened? Hannah took a deep breath. Robert and I dated 5 years ago. We loved each other, or at least I loved him, but he was always obsessed with money, with appearances, with being someone important. We broke up because I didn't fit the image he wanted to project. I nodded. I wasn't surprised. A month ago, I ran into him. He was unrecognizable, thin, dirty, living in a cheap hotel room. Creditors are chasing him. Mandy didn't just leave him. She took everything she could before she left. She sued him for breach of promise. She won. Robert had to sell everything. The car, the jewelry, everything. And his job? He doesn't have one. He was fired from 2 companies for embezzlement. No one wants to hire him. His reputation is destroyed. Hannah took out a tissue. She wiped her eyes. But that's not the worst of it, Ma'am. What else? 2 weeks ago, he collapsed on the street. They took him to the hospital. He has a bleeding ulcer, stress, severe anxiety. The doctors said his body is paying the price for years of pressure and bad decisions. I felt a knot in my stomach. Where is he now? At the General Hospital, in the uninsured patient area. I visit him when I can, but he's alone, completely alone. Mandy never showed up. His friends, the ones he had when he had money, disappeared. I'm the only one who goes to see him. Why are you telling me this, Hannah? She looked at me with sincere eyes. Because despite everything he did, despite how he betrayed you, he is still your son. And he is sorry, truly sorry. He doesn't expect anything from you. But I thought you should know. We fell silent. Did he ask you to call me? No. In fact, he forbade me to. He said you had already suffered enough because of him, that he didn't deserve your forgiveness or your compassion. Then why did you do it? Hannah smiled sadly. Because I believe in second chances, not for you to be mother and son like before. I know that's no longer possible. But for what? So that he can at least have peace, both of you. I thanked her. I paid for the coffees. We said goodbye. I walked home slowly. My mind was a whirlwind. Part of me wanted to ignore everything Hannah had told me. Part of me thought, He deserves it. Let him face the consequences alone. But another part remembered the 10-year-old boy in Miami, smiling, playing, asking for a hug. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, thinking, praying. What do I do, George? What would you do? And then I remembered something George told me once, years ago, when a partner betrayed him in business. Brenda, justice is not revenge. Justice is letting the natural consequences unfold. But compassion is remembering that we are all human. We all fail. We all deserve a chance to get back up, even if it's just to fall again. The next morning I called Martha. Martha, I need you to come with me somewhere. Where, Mom? To the General Hospital. Martha looked at me surprised, but didn't ask anything. She just nodded. We drove in silence. My heart was beating hard. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know what I was going to feel. I just knew I had to go. We arrived at the hospital. It was a large grey place, full of people waiting. I asked for Robert Miller. A nurse directed us to the 3rd floor, internal medicine area. Martha stayed in the waiting room. I went up alone. I walked down the hallway. The smell of disinfectant, the sound of monitors, distant voices. I found his room. Room 312. I knocked on the door. No one answered. I opened it slowly and I saw him. Robert was lying in the bed, connected to IV drips, asleep. He looked old, much older than a man of 35 should look. His face was pale, haggard, deep dark circles, grey hair at his temples. I approached slowly, sat in the chair next to the bed, and watched him. This man who was once my baby, my boy, my hope. This man who betrayed me, who wished for my death, who stole from me. This man who was now alone, sick, broken. And I felt peace, not satisfaction, not joy for his suffering, just peace. Because life had done its job. The consequences had arrived, natural, inevitable, just. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to take revenge. I didn't have to chase him. Karma had collected its debt. Robert slowly opened his eyes. He saw me, and he froze. Mom! His voice was barely a whisper. Hello, Robert. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain stopped him. No, you shouldn't be here. Hannah called you, didn't she? I told her not to. She's worried about you. She's a good woman. I don't deserve her worry. I don't deserve anything. We fell silent. The monitor beeped out his heart rate. Beep, beep, beep. How are you? Robert let out a bitter laugh. How am I? Ruined, sick, alone. Everything I touched turned to ashes. I lost the money, I lost Mandy, I lost my reputation, I lost you. Yes. My answer was simple, direct. I didn't come here to tell you that everything is okay. It's not okay. It probably never will be. I came because Hannah told me you were here. And despite everything, despite every lie, every betrayal, every pain you caused me, you are still my son. Robert started to cry. I'm so sorry, Mom. If I could turn back time, if I could change everything. But you can't. None of us can. We can only live with our decisions. I took something out of my purse, an envelope. What is that? It's money, enough to pay your hospital bills, so you have a place to live when you get out, so you can eat, so you can start over. Robert looked at me with disbelief. I can't accept that. It's not a gift, Robert. It's a last chance. The only one I'm going to give you. What you do with it, that's up to you. I put the envelope on the table next to his bed. But I want you to understand something. This doesn't mean everything is forgiven. It doesn't mean we're going to be mother and son like before. That died. What we had no longer exists. I know. This means I'm giving you the chance to get up, to be better, to learn. Not for me, for you. I stood up. I wish you the best, Robert. Truly. I hope you find your path, you find peace, you find redemption. Mum, wait. I stopped at the door. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And I'm so sorry I failed you. I know. But now you have to live with that and learn to forgive yourself. Because I have already made peace with all this. I left the room. I walked down the hallway without looking back. I went downstairs. I found Martha. Are you all right, Mom? Yes, Martha. I'm fine. And it was true, because I had closed the cycle, not with reconciliation, not with complete forgiveness, not with a movie ending, but with acceptance, with dignity, with human compassion. I had given him an opportunity, not because he deserved it, but because I needed to do it, for my own peace. What he did with that opportunity was no longer my responsibility. We drove back home. The sun was shining, the sky blue, the streets full of life. Martha looked at me out of the corner of her eye. You did the right thing, Mom. You think so? Yes, because you didn't let hatred consume you. And that is what makes you great. I smiled. We arrived home. I went inside. The smell of flowers from the garden filled the air. I sat down in the living room. The same living room where I heard Robert celebrate my death. The same living room where I confronted him. The same living room where he said goodbye with resentment. But I no longer felt pain in that space. I felt peace, because I had learned something fundamental. Karma is not revenge, it is consequence, and the consequences had already arrived. Robert had lost everything, not because I cursed him, not because I pursued him, but because his own actions created his own ruin. Greed blinded him, lies isolated him, betrayal destroyed him, and now he was alone in a hospital, without money, without love, without anything, except an opportunity, a small, fragile opportunity to be better. And I had given him that opportunity not because he deserved it, but because I needed to let go. I needed to close that chapter with dignity. I needed to prove to myself that despite the pain, despite the betrayal, despite everything, I was still who my mother taught me to be, a woman of faith, of values, of compassion. That night, in my room, I looked at my mother's rosary for the last time in this story, and I whispered, Mum, I did it. I survived. I fell. I broke. I cried. But I got up. And now I can live in peace. I put the rosary away in its little box. I no longer needed to squeeze it every night, because I was no longer afraid. I no longer carried resentment. I was no longer tied to the past. I was free. And freedom was the best gift I could give myself. 2 years have passed since that day in the hospital. 2 years of peace, of healing, of learning. I never saw Robert again. I don't know what he did with the opportunity I gave him, if he took advantage of it, if he changed, if he learned. And it's okay not to know, because his path is no longer my responsibility. My path is mine, and I have walked it with dignity. Today I am 64 years old. My hair has more grey, my face more wrinkles, my hands more age spots, but my heart My heart is at peace. The roses in my garden grew. Now they fill the entire yard with their perfume. The prayer group still meets every Thursday. We are 12 women now, all with stories, all with scars, all healing together. The donations I made changed lives. 52 children have a future, seniors have dignity, women have hope. And I have purpose. I learned something important in these years. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the most. And it's okay to walk away. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to protect yourself. Love doesn't mean being a martyr. Love is also respecting yourself. I also learned that justice doesn't always arrive as we expect it, but it always arrives. The consequences of our actions find us, sooner or later, in one way or another. And that peace is not found in revenge. It is found in letting go, in healing, in living. Today, when I look in the mirror, I see a different woman, stronger, wiser, freer, a woman who survived betrayal, who faced the pain, who chose dignity over hatred. And that is something I am proud of. My mother's rosary is now carried by one of the women in my prayer group, a woman who is facing her own betrayal, her own battle. I gave it to her saying the same thing my mother told me. When things get tough, pray, not for miracles, pray for strength. Because strength is the only thing we truly need. The strength to get up, to continue, to heal. If you are listening to this story and are going through something similar, I want you to know something. You are not alone. The pain you feel is real. Betrayal hurts. Loss hurts. But you are also stronger than you think. And you can survive this, just as I survived, with dignity, with faith, with hope. Because life continues, and you deserve to live it in peace. If my story helps even one woman open her eyes, it will have been worth it. May God bless you. May you find your way. May you heal your wounds. And may you never, ever lose your dignity. Because that is the one thing no one can take from you. I am Brenda Miller. I am 64 years old, and this is my story. A story of pain and rebirth. Thank you for listening to the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and click the bell to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, one woman, one life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes a story like this can change a whole day. May God bless you, and until next time.